Hi and welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel, I am Koala. I'm a shamanic practitioner mainly within the Nordic shamanism, but I'm also initiated into Nusta Karpa and the Munaki rites within the Kiro medicine. So today we're gonna continue talking about spiritual hygiene, and this is part 2 out of 2 so far. If you have questions or if you had questions on my first video, then I will make a part 3 and answer those questions and talk about things that I maybe forgot to mention in these videos. But so far, part 2 out of 2. So in my first video, I talked about my personal spiritual hygiene in the morning, in the evening, when I get home, and what solutions I have for people entering my home and my space, and also for when other family members get home. And today I'm going to be talking about spiritual hygiene in situations when we give healing to other people or receive healing from other people. So what I want to talk about mainly is the fact that there are so many people out there that don't really practice spiritual hygiene, and most often I don't blame them. It's not something that people do or don't do purposefully. Like, it's not something they do on purpose. There are some people out there that don't really know about it, and they teach the wrong thing or doesn't teach it at all. And so when giving healing to others, first of all, there are several aspects to think about. So I'm gonna try and take them one at a time. So the first thing is to make sure that you are cleansed as a healer when you are about to give healing to another person. Make sure that you've cleansed yourself. And you can't do this with just flinging some sage around and then you're done. That's not what I mean. If you use some kind of incense, or you can use some kind of incense or smoke, or maybe bells or drums or something to clear the space, wonderful, wonderful. And if you have a practice for that, keep up the good work. When it comes to yourself, maybe you already have a practice to cleanse your own body, mind, and spirit and energy body before giving healing. If you do, keep up the good work. If you don't, or if you want some maybe insights into another way of doing it, here I am. So first of all, make sure you are really cleansed. So don't go into the situation having some heavy emotions or heavy energy inside your bubble and inside your energy field. So for instance, if you have clients back to back, maybe I think the hardest part for me as a spiritual healer, as a healer, is to be in a public place or public space and do healing, because there's so many aspects to think about. And of course, if I would do it, I don't think I would actually put myself in a situation where I would do it day after day after day after day. If I were, then I would make sure I have a practice that upholds my the clean space, the clear space that I'm in. I would have some practice for people entering and exiting. But I think the hardest thing for me has been I actually didn't do healing sessions when I've been at fairs and that sort of thing, like markets or fairs. I've been to those a few times, having a space there, but I have focused on rune drawings. So drawing runes and giving out messages and that sort of thing, because giving healing in that situation is it's there are too many energies floating around, and people are experts at directing their energy. And even within a sacred space, people can direct their energy maybe into it, and the person that is receiving the healing, it's not easy for them either. So it some aspects of the healing process takes longer. So it's just too much to think about, and fortunately, I haven't had to be in that situation yet that I need to think about those things, and it's not something I would like to, I think, do. But yeah, there are so many things. So I think that's when there's too many people around, too many energies, it's not the right place or the right time to give healing and receive healing. So if I go to a fair as a visitor looking for someone to help me, I have I ever received a healing? I have received a healing at a fair once, but it was a person holding like a small workshop. So it was within a smaller physical space at the center where the fair was held. So it wasn't among all of the people. We were a smaller group of people inside an enclosed area. And that worked rather fine, actually. The person was really good at holding that kind of space. So that worked. But yeah, so I'm not going to be talking about that as much, but what I'm talking about is giving healing to one person within a closed space, or maybe outside, but just you and them, me and them. So I'm going to stop rambling now. I don't know why my head went to a fair situation. Really, I don't know. So make sure that your energy field is clear. So in the first video, I talked about what I do morning and evening, and that practice is a really good practice to also use when you are about to give healing. So cleanse your energy field from heavy energy, give it to the Earth Mother, and then refill with energy from the Earth Mother and the Sky Father, so that you feel that your space is cleared, the space that you're going to work inside. And so from your heart space and out, all the way out to the space that you are going to be doing the healing inside of. And if you're doing it on like remotely, then focus on your space anyway, and invite the machine people into that space so that you feel that you can reach out like that remotely. And maybe you want to ask your client to do some things beforehand as well, but this is a focus on you. So apart from just a general cleansing of your energy field, I also make sure that my hollow bone is clear. So I want to be a clear channel for the healing that I'm about to give. So I cleanse my hollow bone a bit extra. And there are several ways of doing this. I can use the practice with a stick from the Munai Key. And I can also just focus on my hollow bone and clear it with my breath a few times and make sure that it feels hollow and clear. And the goal of whatever I do is to feel like I have a clear mind and a clear heart. I am centered within my space, and there are nothing out from the outside affecting me in that moment, so that I am centered and I am calm and I am in my space. It's my energy field is clear when I meet my client. So those are the things I do to prepare, and it's quite easy actually. It just needs to be consistent, you know. So when I book a time with someone, I make sure that I don't come running in and then sit down and be like, okay, good, but let's get started. I make sure that I have a few moments to do this, to really settle myself before. And so if I have set a time like 2 in the afternoon, like 2 p.m. with someone, and I run a bit late, so I'm home like 10 minutes to 2, that might still be too tight. So even though I'm actually in my home at the time of the meeting, most of my meetings are remotely right now. So even though I'm at home and could be ready, I take the time I need to settle. And so I make sure I have like a half an hour, 20 minutes to half an hour before I have a meeting with someone, because I know that I need that time, and maybe I need to make something to drink, and so I need time for my spiritual hygiene beforehand. And if I am running late, which is never, it's not often, but it happens that I'm actually away from home, and then it's my first time in the afternoon or in the evening that I have with someone, and I come from the outside in, then I need a few moments. I might even need a shower if I need to, depending on what day I've had and that sort of thing. And I make sure that I give myself that time. So it's much better, from my experience and my understanding, is that it's much better to, when I know that I'm going to be late, I make contact with the person that I am supposed to meet, and I say, I'm sorry, I'm going to be this much late. Is that okay with you? Or I hope that's okay with you. I will see you then. And if a person calls back or reaches out back and say, well, that's actually, I'm on a tight schedule today, that doesn't work for me, then I say, well, then I have to reschedule. So even though I might be at home at 2 o'clock, and the time is 2 o'clock, and I could physically be there, if I'm not spiritually there, if I'm not spiritually cleansed and I'm not mentally prepared, then it's better to do it another day, because it could just mess everything up. It could mess the energies up, and it can mess the healing up if everything is not, if I'm not centered. So I would never, well, I don't want to say never, because some things can happen, especially in real life, when we have meetings in real life. But I try my best to never meet a client that I'm supposed to give healing to in a state of anything other than me being centered and cleansed. So I still might have some emotions running, or some thoughts running, and I also have to keep in mind that when I have a meeting with someone, when I book a meeting with someone, we connect on a spiritual level. So sometimes they have reached out to me spiritually before our meeting. So I am sensing their energy, their emotions, their thoughts, and we are connecting beforehand. So everything might not be, even though I have cleansed myself, if I feel something lingering, I most often get like an aha moment when I meet the person. I'm like, oh, it's yours. Okay, good. It happens with friends as well. It happens with friends as well. When I set up an appointment, like to meet a friend for a coffee or something, and I feel all sorts of ways beforehand, and then I meet and I'm like, oh, okay, that's yours. And my friends have learned to that it happens, and so when they meet me, they can be like, oh, you look like how I feel. Are you or are you taking on my stuff again? And I can be like, apparently I did. And that's just out of care, out of caring for someone and having my heart open to them, and that's not wrong. So I do my best to be cleansed and clear before having clients, And then the last bit of whatever is lingering is most often theirs. And if it isn't, I sometimes ask for just a moment more to cleanse the last thing with a stick or something else, that some other technique that I have to get rid of the last lingering thing. Sometimes it's maybe another spirit that's in the area, and sometimes it's something else, and I can ask that something else to just wait outside of the bubble until I am free. Because when you're a spiritual practitioner, there are so many things going on at the same time, and there are most often people and spirits just lined up waiting for their turn, especially periodically, or maybe now in the fall when we are closing in on Samhain. And we're especially between the autumn equinox and what I call Hel's Eve, which is Samhain for a lot of people. There are like, when the veil is thin, there are a lot of energies around, and so sometimes it's just a matter of sitting there and being like, I have cleansed myself. It's not my clients. What can it be? And just asking that whatever it is, stay outside. And that's what opening sacred space is good for. You can ask whatever needs to be inside the space to be inside with you and the client, and everything else will have to take a back seat for now. And yeah, so giving healing, I talked a little bit about in the first video about this, but I'm gonna reconnect to that again, and that is to know where the bad energy is going. So when you're giving healing, it often contains an aspect of pulling out bad energy or like heavy energy, clearing blockages, and having to do something with that heavy energy when you clear the blockages. So you need to know where that is going. For chakra healing, for instance, I usually use what is most often called a shaman stone, and that is an obsidian. I use the obsidian to at the point of where I need to remove a blockage. I can, move it around, especially if the client is lying down and it's in real life. I can do this. I can use the shaman stone, the obsidian, to absorb the heavy energy that needs to be cleared. And as I have a lot of clients remotely, what is more common is that if they are not being taught chakra healing from me, so that they have an obsidian at home, we use that, of course, if they have. So I teach a course in Swedish that is to balance your own chakras and to heal your chakras from the inside out. It's a long process. It's not just a matter of doing a cleansing and the balancing like that and then go about your day. It's a deeper healing process. So my clients are advised to buy an obsidian, or if they have one at home, to use that during the practice. And some of these clients also, or students, contact me when they need help in the clearing process. So then they use that, of course. But if I have a client that I'm giving healing to, shamanic healing or chakra healing or any type of healing, and there is no obsidian to be in the space with the client, sometimes I can have one with me and use that. But more often is the case that the more usual case is that I just direct the bad energy down to the earth. So when I give healing, it's important to know where the bad energy is going. You can't just rip it out and then just leave it hanging. Remember what I said in my previous video about if you leave a void, it's just going to be pouring back in. So you have to know two things. where is the heavy energy going that you're clearing out? Is it going into an absorbing stone? Is it going into the earth? Where is it going? You know. And the other thing is, what are you replacing it with? And sometimes we need to be instant in the replacing, because it might be, especially with really deep and heavy blockages that go through mind, body, and soul, we really need that. So we need to be there right away with some new energy or something else. And we also need to let the process come through all of the stages, so spiritually, mentally, and physically. And you might need for the client to cry, not forcing them, but if they need to, you need to allow them, and they need to feel that they are in the right space and being held enough so that they feel safe enough to cry, or to get rid of those emotions that are connected to that. And then that's also energy. Where is that energy going? Is it going into a stone? Is it going into the earth? Is it going into water? Because some people I know uses water. I learned one practice once, a technique for cleansing your aura, and you used some light salted water to put it in. I took a small workshop in prana healing, or it was a big workshop. But anyway, I think it was prana healing that used, I think it was water with a little bit of salt in it. I'm not sure about the salt though. But so there are different ways of, and different things you can do to hold the bad energy and to get rid of it. But you need to know that it doesn't just happen. You need to have a plan, you know, because what I most often encounters when people come to me that have had maybe bad experiences with healers and healing, in the sense that they have gone to a healer and then 2 days later they feel the same, and they are like, oh yeah, I felt great for 2 days, and then I felt just the same. Then two things might have happened. The first one is the person didn't clear off the energy, so it was lingering around you, it was waiting around you, and waiting for just to be absorbed again, you know, not like an entity or something that has a consciousness, but just energy lingering in your space, and then going back into the void. At, because that's what happens, you know, when you have a void. So the other thing that could have happened is also that you weren't held through the entire process, and the healer just said, oh great, I'm done, thank you very much, I will see you again, or maybe not, and then you went along your merry way, and you weren't given any instructions of what you might experience afterwards, how to deal with things coming up. So you might have cleared a blockage. Let's take that as an example. You might have cleared a blockage on a spiritual and energetic level, and then you might have had some symptoms mentally and physically that should have been guided. You should have been guided through those, and it doesn't mean that the person needs to be with you in that moment, but it means that they should have given you some type of instruction of how to handle it when it comes up. So if you don't have that, then the blockage, that's when the energy just goes back into the void again, because you cleared the heavy energy, but it hasn't been cleared through all levels, so it just settles back in again, or new heavy energy, and you know, the blockage is just rebuilt because uh, because you haven't really worked with whatever comes up, because healing isn't a quick fix. There's no way you can go in and just clear the energy and then not have anything happen afterwards that you need to take care of. Not in the long run. You can do it as a patch up and go on your merry way, as I said. But at some point you need to go in and do the work. So for instance, when I have clients 99% of the time, because again, I'm not perfect. And if I have had a client before, and then there's been a while between two sessions, I might think subconsciously that they know what to expect because we've had the talk before. And for them, it's been a long time. It doesn't come natural to them. They have no way of just retaining that information in the long run. Or maybe they just took that information, put it on that scenario, and that was that. And then they, come back, and I miss to give the information because for me it's obvious, and for me it's obvious to them because we've talked about it before. But in actuality, I need to talk about it every time with every single person, even if it's the same type of information again and again. So I'm not perfect. There are moments where I have it usually, well, usually it doesn't happen very often, but when it happens, it is with people I have had a session with before. And so I had a person recently that actually asked me, yeah, they came back the next day and they were like, "Oh, I feel like this." And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's yeah, that's gonna happen." I'm so sorry I didn't mention it. And then we had a talk. So for me, it's very important that people feel safe enough to come back and talk to me. So even if when there are some things that aren't clear, or maybe I say something and they don't remember, first of all, when I give healing remotely, we record it so that the client can watch back on the information. So even though all of the healing, depending on what it is, might not be included in the recording, the information afterwards is always be recorded so that the person can watch it again. So that's something that I do because I might not remember to tell them everything twice. So and then I also hope that they feel safe enough to come back to me. So maybe reach out via email or via social media the next day or something if something feels off, so that I can guide them through that. So, and if no information is given and the person is just going about their merry way, it's my fault if they are not, if they are back on square one 3 days later. So those are the two things that can happen when the two most common things that can happen, that a healer doesn't know where to put the heavy energy, so it just in a matter of days or weeks it goes right back in again. And that's more common than a healer actually, giving a client a piece of their own crap, which also happens. So that's why I'm bringing this up. So if you're going to receive healing from someone, you should be able to ask questions like, if you come into their space and you feel something is a bit off, or you maybe it's your first healing session, you ask them beforehand, what do you do to cleanse yourself before? And if the answer is, oh, well, I have my my routines that I do this and this and this, or maybe they don't want to share, and that's fine, but you can tell from the answer that they know that they are professional, and that they know that they should have an answer to it, But if the answer is, oh, well, yeah, well, I guess I do this, or if you just feel like there is some like dissonance within it, like, what? Why are you asking this? Or if they get a bit defensive, or if it just doesn't feel right, then it's okay to choose another person, to say, well, okay, well, thank you for that, and ask these questions before you book before you book a session, and also go on recommendation. Maybe But be also mindful that everyone has different days, and like I said, no one's perfect, and make sure that you feel safe with the person so that you can go back and ask them if something feels off. If you walk out of the session, even no matter if it was remotely or in real life, and feel like you can't come back and ask a question tomorrow because they have let you go on, and even if they smile and say, keep in touch or call again if you need something, but if you don't feel it, then reach out to someone else, a spiritual practitioner, when you feel, and you can even, you can do the spiritual hygiene practices that we have that I have talked about in the first video, and try and cleanse yourself. So if you, okay, so let's end the video with this. So my advice is for you when you give healing is to make sure that you are centered, that you are calm, that you have a clear energetic space from the heart space outwards, all in all of the space that you are using. And it's better to be late than to not be centered, and it's better to reschedule than to not be centered. uh, and if you are, and always know where to put the heavy energy when you clear it. That should be obvious, but I know that not all healers learn this. They just learn to, uh, depending on the healing practice, you learn different things. But and one thing that is often missed is where do we put the heavy energy. So when you go into a session as a client, you should feel safe. You should enter the person's space and feel like it's a bit calmer than your space. And for instance, I had a person coming over just a few days ago into my home, and they sat down and they was like, wow, I just feel grounded. Like I was on a plane or a helicopter and we just landed. And I was like, great. That's how I want you to feel when you enter my space. So just fly again. I'm filming this video right after the first video, so there's a fly here. I don't really know what it wants. Anyway, so make sure that you feel safe with the person. Don't hesitate to ask questions before if you have questions on how the person cleanses the space, their energy, and also if you have questions on what you can expect after the session, etc. Because as I said, there can be two things happening. If you feel like 2 days later you feel like you did before the healing session, and one is that the person didn't really know where to put the bad energy, so it just went straight back in. And the second thing can be that you didn't get instructions for what you can expect when it comes to clearing symptoms or healing symptoms afterwards, because you are going in for a spiritual healing, an energetic healing, and that needs to you need to have information on how to deal with that when there are symptoms coming up in your mind, like thought patterns that needs to be cleared as well and dealt with and handled for the healing to really manifest. And then maybe also, most often also, some physical manifestation is needed, and you need to be able to know what I do with the symptoms that I see, because we can call them symptoms. If you go to a healer and they clear your throat chakra, let's say they clear your throat chakra, this is very common. So they clear your throat chakra, and afterwards you can expect some flu-like or cold-like symptoms because you cleared the upper space in your chest, so the upper space in your lungs, your throat, and this area, so your nose and your ears, and you can expect symptoms in that area. And you should always let it just flow. Remember that it's not a real cold, it's not a real flu, you don't have a bug or some kind. If it comes right after or shortly after a healing session, and you know that they have talked about your throat chakra, or just after, if it comes after a healing session, then you can expect some of those symptoms, and you should always just let them flow. You can help them along with maybe some herbs like peppermint, or just letting it flow. Don't use like pharmaceutical medicines to hinder anything, because that's one way of just if you do that, then the healing might not work because you stop the healing from going all the way through your body, because that's the physical symptoms, and then after that you should have some symptoms up here because the energy is lifted. So you have symptoms here, and then you should have clarity, or maybe you can have headache, but you could also have some clarity here. So when your cold like symptoms have gone away, if you treat them right, if you just let it flow, it can be over in like 24 hours or 72 hours, but depending on how deep the healing was and what you actually cleared, what the blockage was, and how deep it went and how big it was. But when it's cleared, the energy lifts, and if there's also a blockage here, you can feel like headache or migraine, or you can have like maybe blurry vision for a day, or or bad dreams. You can have bad dreams. So on the other hand, you can also have a lot of clarity when you lift it. But if you hinder it with, say, ibuprofen or something, you hinder everything, and or you take something to get rid of the throat ache or something like that, then you're not letting the healing work. So that's the kind of information you should get beforehand, and the information is individual, because you might not have cold-like symptoms because you might not have had to release a blockage from the throat, but you might have released some from the heart that gives other symptoms. You might have released it from your solar plexus or your sacral chakra that might give other symptoms, and the root that gives a lot of symptoms as well. And the crown chakra gives other types of symptoms. And so depending on where in your energy body and what it might connect to, you can have different physical symptoms and also different mental symptoms or psychological symptoms as well. And my best advice is to just let it flow. So sit with your emotions as they arise and let them flow. But this is also why I always want people to feel like they come back to me when I give them healing, because I want them to know that if there are something comes up and they feel stuck in it, they should be able to reach out to me, and I can tell them this is fine, this is expected, and this is what you do. And it just takes a few typed rows in lines in an email to make a client feel seen, heard, and to make them know what they can expect and what the next steps are, so that they can actually let it flow, so that you can let it flow when you receive the healing. So it's important for a client to feel safe in the space, to feel safe with the person, and to have the information needed. This should also be true for conventional medicine, like when you go to a doctor, but the system doesn't really look like that, not in my country anyway. But so that's a tale for another video, to talk about But so yeah, I like that when I say let's wrap this up, and I try to like this, and this, it always ends up with me elaborating more. I hope that's okay with you. That's just what I do. So yeah, I feel most often that more information is better than too little information. So I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe. Comment if you have any questions, and yeah, so when you give healing, make sure you know where the bad energy, the heavy energy is going. And the same when you visit a healer, make sure that they know, or it shouldn't be your responsibility. Just know that when you leave them, if those are the things that can go wrong, that can make you feel like you're back to square one just a few days later. So that's what I hope that you take from this video. What you can do as a healer, be aware of what can have went wrong when you leave and feel like you're back at square one. If you feel like you have a bigger burden a few days later, it doesn't have to be that the person giving the healing gave you their bad energy. It can happen if the person didn't cleanse themselves before, if they were stressed, if they had issues that they couldn't put aside, that they couldn't have a clear hollow bone for you. But it can also be that you didn't really feel, you didn't really work with anything before you went to see them, so they cleared the energy, and what is to be expected are symptoms physically and mentally, and that's what happens a few days later, and you feel worse because you're like, where am I, what is happening? I feel way worse. And that's when you should be able to go back to the person and say, hey, this is how I feel. What the F happened? And they should be able to reassure you and say, well, that is to be expected, and this is what you should do. And if during the session they feel like something big can be risen from, can be coming from the healing session, they should say that at the time. They should mention to you that, okay, this is happening, or and this is what you can expect. Sometimes when I have a healing session, and when someone has only booked one healing session, and I find something that is big, I don't clear it without asking the person, because I can say, and then I can say, so in the healing session I can say, okay, so I'm finding something here. I have two choices. I can leave it right now because and just tell you that you need to, this is something that you might need to look at another date. You don't have to do it with me, but there's a cause for something to be dealt with in the future. Not for cause for concern, but maybe I find something that I feel like this is gonna be big. This is a storage for a lot of trauma, or a lot of something else, a lot of grief or anything like that. I let the client know, and I say, I have two choices. And the first one is just me telling you that this is what I found, and this is where it's at, and this is something that you need to work with later. The other option is that I clear this now, but then we would probably have to book another time. We can do that right after this session, or you can come back when you get symptoms. So do you want me to clear it? And if the person says yes, then I say, okay, good. Then I'm going to focus on that right now, and we're going to talk about it afterwards. And that's what I do. So when I find something big that I feel like, oh, this is deep. This is connected to several chakras. This is running all the way through the energy body, or this is some deep trauma sitting right here, then I say that, and I let them know that this is something. I'm not gonna touch it unless you want me to, because we might need some other sessions to deal with it. And then if they say yes and we talk about it afterwards, I ask them, do you want to make another booking now, like within 1 or 2 weeks? Or do you want to come back when you feel the symptoms and hope that I have time for you in the next few days after that? And they can make that decision, because it can be a financial thing that they need to think about, and it can also be time, because so it could be some type of resource. We have to think about those things, that people need resources to be able to receive healing. I know it's crazy, but that's what's often needed. So yeah, sometimes when it comes to light language, for instance, I give healing in like 3 sessions. So from the very beginning, we book 3 sessions, and then they are most often, if we pay it separately, because we might not need all the 3 sessions. But I know from experience that what usually happens throughout the healing process, no matter what we approach. So yeah, I always leave the client with the words, you can come back when you need me, I'm just an email away, and that sort of thing. So I'm going to end this video with the same words I did last time. When you feel like something is disturbing your energy field, when you feel like you suddenly feel a strong emotion negatively, like irritation or anger, or just a mild disturbance in your energy field, stop and cleanse. And I will see you in my next video. Thank you for watching, and yeah, walk in beauty. Xingling.